Hi, welcome back to Forward Community Church Children's Ministries. We've got another Bible story for you today. We're going to continue talking about Moses and the Israelites. Last week, they escaped from Egypt. They crossed the Red Sea and God destroyed Pharaoh's army behind them. God kept providing for them in the desert. Even though He kept providing all these things, the people just kept complaining. But God kept being faithful. He's bringing them to where He wants them to go. After they'd traveled a little ways past where the Red Sea was, God directed them to go to a special mountain. It's called Mount Sinai. As they're journeying, God tells them that if you will obey my voice, you will be my special people and I will be your God. In Exodus 6:7, it says, I will take you as my people and I will be your God. Then you shall know that I am the Lord your God who brings you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. They knew that God had delivered them from the Egyptians and that they continued providing. He directs them to come to this mountain. God tells Moses to go to the top. God comes down on this thing in fire and probably like a volcano, just awe-inspiring. And the whole top was surrounded with this. Nobody could come close except for Moses, who God told to come up. The people camped far back from it because they were afraid. They were afraid of what might happen if they get in God's presence. Well, Moses goes up to the top and God keeps him there for 40 days. God gives him a special set of stone tablets that he writes on, and he writes 10 rules for the children of Israel and for us today. We call them the 10 Commandments. These rules, even though they were given a long time ago, are still great rules for us to live by today. They're very important. So here they are in simple form. Number 1, you shall have no other gods before me. 2, do not make or bow down to images. 3, do not take the Lord's name in vain. 4, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 5, honor your father and your mother. 6, you shall not murder. 7, you shall not commit adultery. 8, you shall not steal. 9, you shall not tell lies. 10, you shall not covet or want other people's things. So these are the things that God wrote on the tablets that he gave to Moses. As Moses comes back down, something bad's happened. He left the people at the bottom and they could see that God was on the mountain. They knew Moses went up, but Moses has been gone a long time. Over a month, 40 days. I think this guy's not coming back. I think he might be dead. I don't know what we're going to do out here in the desert, so let's go back to Egypt. So they built a new idol. They made their own god. They built a golden calf and they started worshiping this thing. The God that had delivered them out of Egypt showed them so many miracles, provided for them, they forgot him in 40 days. And they were just ready to go back to Egypt, back into slavery, and leave it all behind. Moses comes down from the mountain and he sees what's going on. He hears the music and he is so angry. He's been meeting with God. God's revealed so much stuff to him. And here these people are. They've just turned their back on God like that. They're ready to go somewhere else. He throws down the tablets that God had given him and they break into pieces. He runs down the mountain. He takes the golden calf and he burns it in the fire. God causes most of the people who worship that calf to die. Moses stayed down there for a while, sorted things out, got the people back in order, and God said, okay, you broke the tablets, come back up the mountain, and I will meet with you again. Moses goes up the mountain for 40 days again. This time, the people don't build a golden calf. They learn their lesson. They stay there and wait for Moses to come back down. After this, they leave that spot. They're wandering in the desert. God reveals something else to Moses. He says, I want you to make a tabernacle. I want you to make a house for me to live in. It'll be like a tent that you can move, but it's a really fancy tent. It's kind of like a church or a temple. God gave them very specific instructions to make it with special materials, gold and gems. They built it just like God had said, and God would come down and he would dwell in that place. He would stay there. It would be so filled with smoke or fire that nobody could get close unless he wanted them to move. God was making himself known and was living right in the middle of his people. When he wanted to lead them, he led them by a pillar of fire or a pillar of smoke. And when he wanted them to stop and camp somewhere in the desert, he stopped. The people of Israel could come to that temple and they could offer sacrifices. They could worship God. They could show him how much they loved him. He was there in the midst of them. After traveling, they finally come to the edge of the land of Canaan. This is the land that God had promised Abraham and Isaac and Jacob so many years ago. He'd promised that he would give this to their children. They can enter in. They decide they'd better spy it out though. They needed to see what the people were like, what kind of cities they had, if they had big walls, what kind of weapons did they have, can we beat these people? So they selected one person from each of the 12 tribes, 12 spies, and they sent them into the land of Canaan. They told them to search around, see what they could find. And they looked all around. They found some fruit. They found grapes. The clump of grapes was so big that it took 2 of them on a pole to carry it back. The land was very good. Lots of food, lots of space. They could grow animals. They could grow wheat. God really blessed that land. They came back. Remember, there were 12 spies. Well, 10 of them said, we can't do this. Those people, it's a great land. There's lots of stuff. But all those people there, they're giants. They're too big for us. They're too strong. Their cities have really tall walls. I don't know how we're going to beat them. I don't think we can. 2 people, though, their names were Joshua and Caleb. They said, yes, there's lots of big people there, and they have strong cities. God will deliver it into our hands. Look at all He's done for us. He's kept us through the desert. He beat the Egyptians. God can surely do this. But it was 2 versus 10. The people of Israel were now scared. They believed the 10 people, and they said, you know what? We can't do this. Why did we come out here? We're going to go in there and we're going to get slaughtered and die. We might as well go back to Egypt again. They even tried to kill Moses, and they were just going to run back to the Egyptians and become slaves. God got angry at this point. He said, none of you are going to enter into the land of Canaan. You're all going to turn back around. You're not going back to Egypt, but you're going back to the desert. Only 2 people will enter, and that's Joshua and Caleb, who believed me. They've come all this way. God's delivered them out of so many things, and they're on the edge of what God has promised, but they didn't believe what God had said. So He said, turn around and go back. So they had to go back and wander in the desert. They ended up wandering in the desert for 40 more years. Everybody who was an adult, whenever they first tried to go into the land of Canaan, whenever they didn't believe what God had promised, all of them died. Even Moses did not get to go into the promised land. The only people that were adults then were Joshua and Caleb. God spared them, and they led the children of Israel in to conquer the land. God puts all these stories in the Bible for us to learn from. We can learn to trust Him more and more. That's our story for today. Hope to see you all next time. God bless you.